Hey race fans, I ran across a project yesterday that was a little bit challenging in regards to, as I told everybody before, this channel's about sharing what's in my head, tips and tricks on how to do this kind of stuff. And the ones that I worked on yesterday were a little bit challenging, and I figured I probably ought to share this stuff with you because this is the kind of stuff that guys will struggle with. So I'm gonna turn this thing around, and I don't know how long this video is going to be, probably not very long, but this stuff here is sort of kind of important and I want you to see this. So here goes nothing. Okay, been doing a lot of work on a car. As you can see, I got the seat mounted in it. I'm ready to do the funny car cage. Gonna be hard to do the funny car cage with it this high in the air, but I'm gonna figure it out. So the thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm gonna get down here underneath the car, is like fitting difficult tubes, and this is like one of them. I left the front tube loose so I can show you this, but if you look down here and I'll start in the beginning. In a 750 cert car, or yeah, you have to have a cross member. You see it in here that goes from where that it's like, I think that's like the 6A bar or 6B bar, where that rocker bar goes out there. You have to have a cross member that goes all the way across to the other side, and you can see that tube under there from the top. Okay, and a standard door car, that's pretty easy, but when you start building these miniature gassers like this, the small cars, that tube's really a challenge to get in there. Okay, it can be bolted in with the 4-flange or 4-bolt flanges, but those things are a pain in the butt. And I found that if you just put the cross member underneath the trans, or you can get the trans out, it's just as simple. The Chevy 2 I had this cross member in it, was bolted in, and I never unbolted it. I just take the transmission out over the top. So, and that's something I always try to think about, is how am I going to service this thing? What am I going to do to service it? So herein, I'm going to show you how this cross member goes in here. Okay, I'll give you a look underneath. As you can see down in here, see how that goes in front of the pan and underneath the bell housing. And the bell housing is going to have to go over it a tiny bit to get it out, but it'll come out. Like I say, been here, done this. Here's how I start though. Come back here. I know my frame rails are 24 inches apart. So what I do is I tack weld 2 pieces of rectangular tubing on my bench 24 inches apart, so I don't have to lay underneath the car and do this. Okay, then I draw a center line. You can barely see it here, but I've got a center line between those 2 tubes. That allows me to find the center line of my tube, because you don't want it offset. Then what I do is I make a pattern. You can see I use some of the Mosier engineering cardboard here. I had their blister pack cardboard from when I was working there. I had a pile of this in the back that would have got thrown away, so I brought it with me. So then what I do is I make that fit between these tubes. Okay, then I cut a notch in it. You can see the notch. It was roughed in before. I just cut a loop that would go underneath the car, and then I just tuck that baby up between the frame rails. Okay, to make sure I have pan clearance. My angles are something that I can bend, because you can get this in the middle so close that you can't bend those 2 bends in the bender. So I'm trying to keep all that in mind. Then what I do, I don't know if I can do this one-handed, but we're gonna try. I've got a tripod coming to help me with some of this stuff. So what I do is I make this piece so it'll slip up between the frame rails. Can you see that in there? And it'll clear what I want it to clear. Okay, then I go and I lay out a pattern, what I'm looking for too, it's hard to see, but I'm going to try to show you on that side. I try to make that cardboard fit to the top of the frame rail, so I know all that's good. Then I got something to work with on the bench, okay? And I know you guys have seen my video on how I lay out roll cages. I do the same thing with this. I think I got part of a pattern back here, and I can show you quick. What I've done is I've transferred that to this scrap piece of paneling, and then I measured down 13/16. This is my mean dimension in the tubing. Okay, measure up 5.5 from there because that's my radius bend, and then that tells me where that bend there is going to be, where the bend starts. Okay, and it's going to be the same on both sides because it's the same angle. It ended up being a 50-degree angle, is what I bent it. So I just laid that out and bent that tube. Then I'm going to show you the front one, okay? I needed a dropped cross member in the front to clear all the front end stuff. And it's a single bend, but what I did is I measured the bend in, or the angle in the front end, and I duplicated that, okay? Pretty simple, huh? Well, let me show you this back here on the bench. This is how I do this. I make the tubing long, okay? Because when you put it in the bender, it has to be long. You can't bend up close. Like in my bender, you have to leave 16 inches of tubing just to get a 90-degree bend. So let's do this. I'll show you this. I'm gonna go get my piece, laying here on the floor. We'll set this up here. I need to get my square. I wasn't prepared. It's early in the morning. I'm an old guy. Speaking of old, I was coming in here to the shop today. It's 1 degree. Feels like it's 20 below. So I'd like to be living south, but I talked to my buddy Larry Cummings, and they were supposed to get 7 to 10 inches of snow yesterday. So what's the sense of going south, right? So anyways, let's pretend here a minute, okay? My tube's long just like that. So what I do is I line up, I gotta flip this over. I've got a center line right here, okay? And what I do is I line the center line up and I butt it against my tubing. Then what I do is I take my square and I lay it against that tube, and then I draw a line on the tube with my silver pencil. I do that on both sides like this, and then that's where I cut it off. I just cut it in my bandsaw. I just take it over to my bandsaw like this, cut along the line. Then I try to keep it a little proud so I can sand it to fit a little bit, but then that's what you end up with. That cross member in the middle was the same way. I fit that baby in there and had to do a little bit of sanding because I left it proud, but it held itself up in there, and I've got a legal cross member now. So that's what we got going on there. And I've got this seat mounted in here. This is a Race Tech seat that Bill wanted, and I needed to mount the seat in there so I could tell where the funny car cage goes. So I'm going to start bending up those parts today, trying to get all that stuff fit in there, which is going to be an extreme chore because the car's 4 foot off the ground. So I'm going to have to work with a step ladder and try to be smart doing this. I'll take out the door diagonal on the other side and I'll set a step ladder up there, and then I'll start bending parts, figuring out what I need. But as you can tell, this seat takes up most of the interior of the car. But I want them to be safe and I want them to be comfortable. So we're going to work with what we got, which is, in my opinion, a super smart idea. If you guys can afford one of these seats and you can get it in your car, by all means, please do, because these babies are nice. And you know, it's not like he's going to drive it anywhere other than the racetrack. So, but I've been, you sit in a car for an hour, you go up in the staging lanes and all, they're going to scrape the track and you're all strapped in and they tell you, oh, stay in your car, you know. So you want to be able to sit in there for not, you know, 45 minutes to an hour and not be uncomfortable. So, but typically they only do that when it's 95 degrees out, so, you know, racing organizations. But anyways, that's where we're at. Little heads up back here. I got the wishbone all welded together. That's all done. 4-link bars are made. I used the anti-roll as a Rhodes race car, 1.5-inch anti-roll. Very nice piece. I personally like the welded steel arms like this. They're a little bit better than the aluminum stuff, but everything has its place. The aluminum splined arms and spline bars, they all have their place. This car here, being it's so high, you know, I wanted something that would help make it super stable, and I believe that 1.5-inch 120 wall chromoly anti-roll would do it. So, and you can see we got our shock struts in there. I put some more diagonal bracing in the back. I mean, because the parachute anchor's there and you don't want it to pull that bar out, so I had to put some triangulation in there and a little more 1-inch tubing here. As I say, triangles are stronger than rectangles, okay? Listen to me when I'm yelling at you. But that's where we're going to this car. Things are going pretty good. You know, like I say, this next part's going to be challenging, but hey, I'm up to it. I like challenges. So anyways, thanks for watching. Oh, one other tidbit I'm going to share too. If you got to grind your welds, you're a grinder, you're not a welder. So work on making your beads look pretty, and you want them to be functional. Fusion is not welding. You got to use filler rod to weld. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but I'm just telling you how I think. So yeah, God bless America. Pray for our troops, guys. Thanks for watching. Stay warm if you can.